The stagecoach rattled to a stop in front of the weathered general store in Taylor, Nebraska, stirring up a cloud of dust that made Harriet Zimmerman cough into her handkerchief. As she stepped down onto the sun-baked earth of this frontier town she would now call home. She was 42 years old, her dark hair threaded with silver, and her hands bore the weathered marks of a woman who had known hard work all her life. The advertisement she had answered 3 months ago had specified a rancher seeking a wife, no mention of age requirements, and she had written honestly about herself in her letter, though she wondered now if Vincent Vaughn had truly understood when she said she was past her youth. A tall man detached himself from the shade of the store's overhang, his lean frame moving with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin. He looked to be in his mid-30s, with sun-bronzed skin and hair the color of wheat at harvest time. His blue eyes took in the sight of her, traveling from her sensible traveling dress to the lines around her eyes that spoke of laughter and sorrow both. Harriet lifted her chin, preparing herself for the disappointment she had seen before in men's faces when expectations did not match reality. The year was 1876, and women her age were not typically considered desirable prospects for marriage, especially not to younger men who could have their pick of fresh-faced girls barely out of childhood. Vincent Vaughn's face broke into a genuine smile that reached his eyes and crinkled the corners. He strode forward, removing his hat in a gesture of respect that made her heart skip unexpectedly. "Mrs. Zimmerman, I presume?" "Miss, actually," she corrected softly, her voice carrying the faint accent of her Pennsylvania Dutch upbringing. "I was widowed young and never remarried." "Vincent Vaughn, but I hope you'll call me Vince." He extended his hand, and when she placed hers in it, his grip was warm and firm. His eyes studied her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I have to say, your letters didn't do you justice. You're even more striking than I imagined." Harriet felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Mr. Vaughn, I appreciate your kindness, but there's no need for flattery. I wrote honestly about my age. I'm 42 and I look it. If you've changed your mind, I have enough set aside to purchase a ticket back east." Vincent's expression grew serious, and he still held her hand in his. "Miss Zimmerman, I'm 36 years old. I've been running my ranch alone since my father died 2 years ago. In that time, I've had visits from matchmaking neighbors who brought their daughters and nieces, girls of 18 or 20 who giggled at everything and knew nothing of the realities of life out here. They saw the ranch as an adventure, not a home. They saw me as a romantic notion, not a man who needs a true partner." He paused, his thumb brushing across her knuckles in a gesture that felt both tender and deliberate. "When I read your letters, the honesty in them, the understanding of what it means to build a life through hardship and joy both, I knew you were exactly what I needed. Perfect, in fact. You'll keep me young at heart." The sincerity in his voice made Harriet's eyes sting with unexpected tears. She had steeled herself for rejection, for the humiliating journey back to Pennsylvania, where she would return to her brother's household as the perpetual spinster aunt. She had not prepared herself for acceptance, much less admiration. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you'll give this a fair chance. Say you'll let me show you the ranch and the life we could build together. If after a few weeks you decide it's not what you want, I'll personally escort you back east and bear the cost myself. But I hope you'll stay." His voice dropped lower, more intimate. "I truly hope you'll stay, Harriet. May I call you Harriet?" "Yes," she managed, finding her voice. "And I'll call you Vince. As for the rest, I'll stay. I came here to build a new life, and I'm not one to run at the first challenge. I had a feeling you weren't." His smile returned, warmer than the Nebraska sun beating down on them. "Let me gather your trunks. The ranch is about an hour's ride from town. As Vincent loaded her belongings onto his wagon, Harriet studied the town of Taylor. It was small but tidy, with a main street that boasted a general store, a saloon, a church with a white steeple, and various other establishments necessary to frontier life. People moved about their business, some casting curious glances her way. She knew she would be the subject of gossip, the mail-order bride who was older than expected, but she had weathered worse than small-town talk. The wagon seat was high, and Vincent offered his hand to help her up. His touch was steady, and when she was settled, he climbed up beside her with practiced ease. The proximity felt both strange and somehow right. She caught the scent of sage and leather from him, mixed with honest sweat from a day's work. "Tell me about your ranch," Harriet said as they left the town behind, heading into the rolling grasslands that stretched endlessly in every direction. "It's about 300 acres, with a good creek running through the north pasture. I run cattle mostly, about 200 head right now. I've got a small herd of horses too, breeding stock that I sell to the cavalry and to other ranchers. The house is modest, built by my father when he first claimed the land. It's solid and weatherproof, but it could use a woman's touch." He glanced at her with a hint of uncertainty. "I know it's not fancy living." "I didn't come expecting fancy," Harriet assured him. "I was raised on a farm myself. I know how to work, how to make do, how to turn a house into a home. My late husband and I had a small farm in Pennsylvania before he died of pneumonia. That was 20 years ago. I was young enough then that people expected me to remarry quickly, but I couldn't. I helped my brother on his farm instead, raised his children alongside him after his wife died in childbirth." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I never thought I'd have the chance to build my own home again. When I saw your advertisement, something in me stirred to life." "Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense," Vincent said quietly. "I felt the same when I read your first letter, like something that had been sleeping woke up." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, and Harriet took in the landscape. It was so different from Pennsylvania's green hills and dense forests. Here the sky seemed impossibly vast, and the grass rolled like an ocean under the wind. There was a wild beauty to it that called to something deep in her soul. "You get lonely out here?" she asked. "Sometimes," Vincent admitted. "Less so now that you're here. I have ranch hands who help during busy seasons, but most days it's just me and the animals. I read a lot in the evenings and I ride into town for church on Sundays when weather permits. But yes, there are long nights when the silence feels heavy. I want children, a family, the sound of laughter in the house. I want someone to share my thoughts with at the end of the day, someone who understands the satisfaction of a job well done and the frustration when the weather doesn't cooperate." He looked at her directly. "I want a partner, Harriet, a true partner. That's worth more than a pretty face that doesn't know hardship." "You might still find both," Harriet said, testing him a little. "Pretty and practical aren't mutually exclusive." "I already have," Vincent said, and the way he looked at her made her heart flutter like a girl's. "I just hope you'll think the same of me once you've seen me covered in dust after a day of breaking horses, or mud from pulling cattle out of the creek." Harriet laughed, a genuine sound that surprised her. "I've shoveled more manure than I care to remember, Mr. Vaughn. I think I can handle a little dust and mud." "Vince," he corrected with a grin, "and I'm holding you to that." The ranch came into view as they crested a small rise. The house was indeed modest, a sturdy wooden structure with a covered porch that faced east to catch the morning sun. A barn stood nearby, well-maintained and larger than the house. Corrals spread out behind it, and she could see cattle grazing in the distance. A windmill turned lazily in the breeze, and she could hear the creak of its blades. It's beautiful, Harriet said honestly. It's real and solid and beautiful. Vincent's face lit up with pleasure at her words. Wait until you see the sunrise from the porch. It's like the whole world catches fire with gold and pink and orange. I have my coffee there every morning, and I've always wished I had someone to share it with. He pulled the wagon up to the house and jumped down, then came around to help her descend. This time, when his hands circled her waist to lift her down, she felt the strength in them, the capable sureness. He held her a moment longer than necessary, their faces close, and she saw something kindle in his eyes that matched the flutter in her own chest. "Welcome home, Harriet," he said softly. The word home resonated through her like a bell. She had not had a home of her own in 2 decades. Her brother's farm had been shelter and family, but it had been his place, not hers. This, though, could be hers if she made it so. Vincent showed her through the house, and she assessed it with a practical eye. The main room served as kitchen, dining area, and sitting room, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall. The furniture was simple but well made, clearly crafted by someone with skill. 2 bedrooms led off the main room, and Vincent gestured to the larger one. "This was my parents' room. I've been using the smaller one since my father died. I thought you might want this one for yourself until you're comfortable with other arrangements." His ears reddened slightly, and Harriet found his embarrassment endearing. "That's very thoughtful," she said, appreciating his consideration. They would be married within the week, she assumed, as was practical on the frontier, but the fact that he wasn't assuming immediate intimacy spoke well of his character. "I'll bring your trunks in and let you settle yourself. There's a pump in the kitchen for water, and I've got a bathing room off the back with a copper tub. Takes a while to heat enough water, but I thought you might want to wash the trail dust off." He hesitated. "I usually eat simple fare, beans and bacon and such. I'm not much of a cook, I'll admit." "That's one of many areas where I hope you'll improve my life considerably." Harriet smiled. "I'm a good cook, and I enjoy it. It will be my pleasure to feed you properly, though it might take a day or 2 to stock the pantry the way I like it. We can ride into town tomorrow if you want to buy supplies, or I can go alone if you'd rather rest." He was trying so hard to be considerate, to make her feel welcome rather than obligated. "I'd like to go with you," Harriet said. "I should meet people, start building connections. And I want to see what the general store stocks so I know what I'm working with." "That's settled then." Vincent smiled at her, that warm, genuine expression that transformed his face from handsome to something that made her breath catch. "I'll get your things." After he left, Harriet moved through the house, touching the furniture, looking out the windows at the vast landscape. The bedroom he had given her was simply furnished with a bed, a dresser, and a washstand, but it was clean and the mattress looked comfortable when she pressed it experimentally. She opened her largest trunk and began unpacking her clothes, hanging dresses in the small wardrobe and placing her undergarments in the dresser drawers. Vincent knocked softly before entering with another trunk. "Where would you like this one?" "Just there by the foot of the bed, thank you." She watched him set it down carefully. "Vince, when were you thinking we should marry? I know it's practical to do it quickly, but I want to know what you're expecting." He straightened and met her eyes. "I thought perhaps this Sunday after church services, if that suits you. Gives you a few days to settle in and be sure this is what you want. The Reverend can perform the ceremony, and we can have a small gathering afterwards if you'd like. Let people meet you properly." "That sounds reasonable." Harriet smoothed her hands over her skirt, a nervous gesture. "I want you to know I'm not expecting romance or grand gestures. I understand this is a practical arrangement, but I will be a good wife to you, Vince. I'll keep your house, cook your meals, help with the ranch work where I can. I'll be faithful and honest and work hard to make this a real partnership." Vincent crossed the room to her, and before she could react, he took both her hands in his. "Harriet, look at me." When she raised her eyes to his, she saw an intensity there that stole her words. "Maybe this started as a practical arrangement, but I don't want it to stay that way. You're a beautiful woman, inside and out from what I can see already. I'm hoping this can become more than practical. I'm hoping we can build something real together, something that includes affection and companionship and, yes, romance if you're willing. I know it's early days yet, but I want you to know what I'm hoping for." Harriet swallowed hard, emotions rising in her throat. "I haven't thought of myself as someone who might inspire those feelings in a long time. You're younger than me, and you could have anyone. I don't want anyone. I want you. These few hours since you arrived have shown me more life and genuine connection than I've felt in years. Your laugh, the way you really look at things when you're assessing them, the honesty in your words. That's what draws me, not just a pretty face that will fade with time. Real beauty doesn't fade, Harriet. It just becomes more evident." He raised one of her hands to his lips and kissed it gently. "Will you let me court you properly, even though we're doing things a bit backwards?" Tears pricked at Harriet's eyes and she nodded, not trusting her voice. Vincent smiled and released her hands slowly, as if reluctant to let go. "I'll leave you to finish settling in. Take your time. When you're ready, come out to the kitchen and I'll show you where everything is. Then maybe we can sit on the porch and watch the sunset together. It's nearly as beautiful as the sunrise." After he left, Harriet sat on the edge of the bed and let herself feel the full weight of what was happening. She had come west expecting duty and hard work, perhaps some companionship if she was fortunate. She had not expected this careful tenderness, this respect, this suggestion of something deeper growing between them. Vincent Vaughn was proving to be a remarkable man, and she found herself hoping desperately that she could be the woman he seemed to think she was. She finished unpacking and changed into a fresh dress, something simple and practical in deep blue that she knew brought out her eyes. She brushed her hair and repinned it, studying herself in the small mirror over the washstand. The lines on her face were real, the silver in her hair was spreading, but perhaps Vincent was right. Perhaps there was beauty in living, in surviving, in the strength it took to start over at 42. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Vincent at the stove, attempting to make coffee. He looked up at her entrance and his eyes warmed appreciatively. "That's a lovely color on you. Thank you." She moved to the stove. "Let me do that. You said yourself you wanted a good cook, so you might as well let me start earning my keep." "You don't have to earn anything, Harriet. You're not a servant here. You're meant to be my wife, my equal partner." "Then let me contribute as a partner would," she said gently, taking the pot from him. "I suspect you're much better with horses and cattle than with a cook stove, just as I'm better with cooking than with roping steers. We each bring our strengths." He conceded with a smile and stepped back, watching as she efficiently prepared proper coffee and began investigating what supplies he had on hand. It wasn't much, mostly the basics a bachelor would stock, but she could make do. Tomorrow's trip to town would be essential. "You have chickens?" she asked as she worked. "No, I buy eggs in town when I think of it. I know I should keep hens, but I haven't gotten around to it. We should get some chickens then. Fresh eggs make all the difference, and I can trade extra eggs in town for other supplies. Do you have a garden plot?" "There's a fenced area behind the house that my mother used to garden in, but it's gone to weeds. I'm afraid I don't have the touch for growing things." "I do," Harriet said with satisfaction. "It's late in the season, but I can get some cool weather crops in, and I'll prepare the soil properly for a good garden next spring." "Do you hunt?" "Yes, deer and sometimes antelope. There's good hunting in the hills to the west." Then we'll have variety in our meals. This is good, Vince. We can make this work well." She glanced at him and found him watching her with something like wonder on his face. "What is it? You're already thinking of this as home, planning improvements, talking about next spring. I was half afraid you'd spend the whole time looking for reasons to leave." Harriet set down the spoon she was using and turned to face him fully. "I'm a practical woman, Vince. I don't make decisions lightly, and once I commit to something, I see it through. I committed to this when I stepped on that stagecoach. Unless you give me serious reason to doubt you're a good man, I'm here to stay and make the best life we can together." He crossed to her, and this time he cupped her face gently in his calloused hands. "You're an extraordinary woman, Harriet Zimmerman. I'm a lucky man." Before she could respond, he leaned down and kissed her softly, a gentle brush of lips that asked rather than demanded. Harriet's eyes fluttered closed, and she let herself lean into the kiss, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. She could feel his heart beating strong and fast under her palm. When he pulled back, they were both breathing a little harder. "I hope that was all right," he said quietly, his thumbs stroking her cheeks. "I've been wanting to do that since you stepped off that stagecoach." "It was more than all right," Harriet whispered. "It was lovely." They ate a simple supper of beans and bacon that Harriet managed to improve with some dried herbs she had brought in her trunk. As they ate, they talked, sharing stories from their pasts, learning each other's histories and hopes. Vincent told her about growing up on the ranch, about his father's determination to build something lasting in this wild country, about his mother's death from influenza when he was 15, and his father's slow decline after losing his beloved wife. Harriet shared her own history, her childhood on her family's Pennsylvania farm, her brief marriage to a kind man who had died too young, her years helping her brother raise his motherless children. They're grown now, living their own lives. "My brother remarried 5 years ago, a good woman who made it clear she wanted her own household without her husband's spinster sister underfoot. She wasn't cruel about it, just practical. It made me realize I had stayed too long, made myself too comfortable in a life that wasn't truly mine." "Their loss is my gain," Vincent said firmly, "though I'm sorry you were made to feel unwelcome in what had been your home. It was never really my home, though, not the way this could be." She looked around the simple kitchen, out the window at the darkening prairie. "I feel something here, Vince. Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." After supper, they sat on the porch as he had promised, watching the sun paint the western sky in brilliant oranges and purples and reds. Vincent sat close enough that their shoulders touched, and Harriet found herself leaning into his warmth as the evening air cooled. His hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Tell me about the seasons here," she said. "What should I expect? Spring is beautiful but unpredictable. We can get late snows, and the creek floods sometimes with snowmelt from the north. Summer is hot and dry, and we have to watch for prairie fires. Fall is my favorite when the heat breaks and the grass turns gold. Winter can be brutal, with blizzards that last for days. We'll need to stock up well before the first snow." He squeezed her hand. "But the house is tight and warm, and I've got plenty of firewood laid by. We'll be snug enough." The intimacy of the word we sent a warm shiver through Harriet. She was part of a we again, part of a partnership that was already beginning to feel real and right. "I should probably turn in," she said reluctantly as full darkness fell and stars began to emerge in stunning profusion across the vast sky. "It's been a long day of traveling." "Of course." Vincent stood and helped her to her feet, his hands lingering on hers. "Sleep well, Harriet. Tomorrow we'll go to town and start building our life in earnest." She rose on her toes impulsively and kissed his cheek. "Good night, Vince. Thank you for making me feel so welcome." His arms came around her in a gentle embrace, and she let herself relax into his strength. "The pleasure is entirely mine. Sweet dreams." In her room, Harriet prepared for bed with a lightness in her heart she had not felt in years. She could hear Vincent moving about in his own room, the sounds of another person in the house both strange and comforting. When she finally lay down in the comfortable bed, she found herself smiling into the darkness. Life was strange and surprising. She had come west expecting simple companionship and practical partnership. She was finding something that felt like it might blossom into love. Morning came early on a ranch, and Harriet woke to the sound of Vincent moving about the kitchen. She dressed quickly in a practical work dress and emerged to find him struggling with the coffee again. She laughed and shooed him away, taking over with competent efficiency. "Go do whatever morning chores you have," she said. "I'll have breakfast ready when you're done." "What time do you usually eat?" "Whenever I get hungry and remember to cook something," Vincent admitted sheepishly. "Usually about an hour after I start work. Then I'll have food ready in an hour. Now go, let me establish my domain here." He grinned and grabbed his hat. "Yes, madam." "It's good to have someone taking charge. I can already tell my life is going to improve considerably." After he left, Harriet explored the kitchen and pantry more thoroughly, making mental notes of what they needed. She found flour and salt pork and dried beans, the staples of bachelor cooking. She set about making a proper breakfast of biscuits and gravy, using the supplies at hand and the skills she had honed over decades of cooking. When Vincent came in an hour later, his eyes widened at the spread on the table. "Good Lord, woman, I haven't eaten like this since my mother died." "Get used to it," Harriet said with satisfaction. "I take pride in my cooking and I like feeding people. Sit down and eat while it's hot." They ate together, and Vincent's obvious enjoyment of the meal warmed her heart. He praised every bite, and she could tell it was genuine appreciation, not empty flattery. When they finished, he helped her clear the table without being asked, working alongside her in a comfortable rhythm that felt like they had been doing this for years instead of mere hours. The ride to town was pleasant in the cool morning air. Vincent pointed out landmarks and neighbors' ranches as they passed, sharing bits of local history and gossip. Harriet listened carefully, filing away information about the people she would soon be living among. Taylor's Main Street was busier than it had been the previous afternoon. Vincent helped her down from the wagon in front of the general store, and Harriet noticed several people pause in their activities to watch them. She lifted her chin and met their gazes directly, not with defiance but with quiet confidence. Inside the store, a plump woman with kind eyes greeted them from behind the counter. "Vincent Vaughn, as I live and breathe, and this must be your intended bride we've all been hearing about. Mrs. Henderson, may I present Miss Harriet Zimmerman. Harriet, this is Martha Henderson. She and her husband run the general store, and she knows everything that happens in Taylor and the surrounding territory." Martha laughed good-naturedly. "He's not wrong. Welcome, Miss Zimmerman. We're glad to have you here. Lord knows this man has needed someone to look after him properly. Please call me Harriet, and I'm pleased to meet you. I'm hoping you can help me stock a proper pantry. I'm afraid Vince's supplies are rather limited." "That's putting it kindly," Martha said with a twinkle in her eye. "Come, let's see what you need. Vincent, you might as well sit yourself down. This could take a while." Harriet spent the next hour selecting supplies with Martha's help. The older woman proved to be a wealth of information, sharing recipes suited to the local ingredients and tips for preserving food in the Nebraska climate. She also subtly vetted Harriet, asking careful questions about her background and skills. Harriet answered honestly, and she could see Martha's approval growing. "You'll do well here," Martha finally pronounced. You've got a practical head on your shoulders and you're not afraid of work. That's what matters on the frontier. Age is just a number when you've got good sense and a strong back. Thank you, Harriet said sincerely. I appreciate the welcome. I'll confess I was nervous about how people would receive me. There's been talk, I won't lie, Martha said frankly. Some thought Vincent was foolish to send for a bride without specifying he wanted a young girl, but those of us with sense know better. Young girls are fine for looking at, but they don't know how to be proper partners. You've got experience and wisdom, and from what I can see, you and Vincent are well matched. I think so too, Harriet said softly, glancing over to where Vincent was talking with another man near the door. As if he felt her gaze, he looked over and smiled at her, that warm, genuine smile that made her feel like the most important person in the world. He's smitten, Martha observed with satisfaction. I haven't seen that boy smile like that since before his father died. You're good for him already. They loaded the supplies into the wagon, and Vincent insisted on one more stop. He took her to the small office of the local newspaper, where a weathered man with ink-stained fingers took down the information for their marriage announcement. We'll run it in this week's edition, he promised. Should go out just about the time you're saying your vows. Their final stop was the church, a simple white building with a tall steeple. The Reverend, a thin man with gentle eyes, greeted them warmly. Vincent, good to see you, and this must be Miss Zimmerman. Reverend Parker, yes, this is Harriet. We'd like to be married this Sunday after services if you're willing. The Reverend studied them both carefully. Have you had time to discuss what marriage means, the commitment you're making to each other and before God? We've talked, Vincent said, reaching for Harriet's hand. And we'll continue talking. But I know what I want, Reverend. I want Harriet as my wife, my partner, my companion for whatever years God grants us. I'll cherish her and provide for her and honor the vows I'll make. And you, Miss Zimmerman, the Reverend asked gently, are you entering this marriage of your own free will with a clear understanding of what you're committing to? I am, Harriet said firmly. I'm not a young girl with romantic notions. I understand what marriage is, the work and the compromise and the dedication it requires. I believe Vincent and I can build a good life together, and I'm prepared to commit myself fully to that endeavor. Reverend Parker smiled. Then, I'll be honored to perform the ceremony. Sunday after services it is. I'll announce it to the congregation this week so anyone who wishes to attend can make plans. On the ride back to the ranch, Harriet felt the weight of what was coming settle over her, not unpleasantly but seriously. In 4 days she would be married, would legally and morally bind herself to this man she barely knew. Yet somehow it felt right in a way her first marriage, arranged by well-meaning family when she was barely 20, never quite had. Are you having second thoughts? Vincent asked quietly, reading something in her silence. No, Harriet said honestly. Just thinking about how strange life is. 4 days ago I was in Pennsylvania helping my brother's wife can vegetables for the winter. Now I'm in Nebraska about to marry a rancher I've known for less than 2 days. It's a lot of change very quickly. We can wait longer if you want. There's no rush. No, Sunday is fine. I'm not afraid of the commitment. I suppose I'm just marveling at how much can change in such a short time. She looked at him. Do you have any doubts? Not a single one, Vincent said with conviction. I've never been more certain of anything. You're exactly what I need, Harriet, what I want. These 2 days with you have shown me that. What have they shown you? She asked curiously. He was quiet for a moment, guiding the horses around a rough patch of road before answering. That I can talk to you about anything and you truly listen. That you look at problems practically and find solutions instead of complaining. That you laugh easily and work hard without making a fuss about it. That you're kind but not soft, strong but not hard. That when you smile at me, I feel like I could take on the world. That when I kiss you, I want to keep kissing you and build a life worthy of someone as remarkable as you." Harriet felt tears sting her eyes. "You have a poet's soul hidden under that cowboy exterior, Vincent Vaughn." "Only with you," he said. "You bring it out in me." The next few days fell into a comfortable rhythm. Harriet established her routines, cooking hearty meals that Vincent praised lavishly, cleaning and organizing the house, beginning to put her stamp on what would be her home. Vincent showed her around the ranch, introducing her to the cattle and horses, explaining his breeding program and his plans for expanding the herd. She proved surprisingly adept with the horses, approaching them with calm confidence that they responded to. "I grew up with draft horses on the farm," she explained as she stroked the nose of a particularly fine mare. "Big, gentle giants. These are more spirited, but the principle is the same. Respect them and they'll respect you." "Would you want to learn to ride?" Vincent asked. "It would give you more freedom to explore, and it would be nice to ride out together sometimes." "I'd like that," Harriet agreed. "Though I'll warn you, I haven't been on a horse in 20 years. I might be a bit rusty." "We'll start slow," Vincent promised. "I've got a gentle gelding that would be perfect for you." Each evening they sat on the porch and talked, sometimes for hours, sharing their thoughts and dreams and fears. Harriet learned about Vincent's hope to eventually breed some of the finest horses in Nebraska, to build a legacy that would last beyond his lifetime. Vincent learned about Harriet's love of reading, her secret dream of someday having a real library instead of the handful of battered books she had brought with her. "We'll build you a library," Vincent promised. "Maybe add on to the house, create a proper room for books. We can order them from catalogs, build the collection over time." "That's an expensive dream," Harriet protested, though her eyes shone. "What good is success if we don't use it to build the life we want?" Vincent countered. "Besides, I like the idea of winter evenings with you reading aloud while I mend tack. Sounds perfect to me." They grew more comfortable with physical affection, holding hands naturally, Vincent's arm around her shoulders as they sat together. Goodnight kisses that grew slightly longer and more heated each evening. Harriet felt desire stirring in her, feelings she had thought long dead. Vincent was patient but ardent, making it clear he wanted her while respecting the boundaries she had set until after the wedding. Sunday morning dawned clear and beautiful. Harriet dressed in her best gown, a deep green dress she had made herself with careful attention to detail. It was not a traditional white wedding gown, but at her age and as a widow, white would have been inappropriate. The green suited her coloring and was fine enough for the occasion. Vincent wore a new suit he had purchased on a quick trip to town earlier in the week, and when he saw her emerge from the bedroom, his breath caught audibly. "Harriet, you're absolutely beautiful." "You're quite handsome yourself," she said, admiring how the dark suit emphasized his lean strength and brought out the blue of his eyes. "Shall we go get married?" The church was surprisingly full when they arrived. Apparently word had spread, and the entire town seemed curious about Vincent Vaughn's mail-order bride. Harriet held her head high as they walked up the aisle together, Vincent's hand warm and steady on her arm. Reverend Parker's ceremony was simple but meaningful, emphasizing the partnership and commitment of marriage. When Vincent said his vows, his eyes never left Harriet's face, and his voice rang with conviction. Harriet's own voice was steady as she promised to love, honor, and cherish this man who had seen value in her when society said she was past her prime. "You may kiss your bride," Reverend Parker announced, and Vincent cupped Harriet's face gently in his hands, kissing her with tender passion that made her forget the watching congregation. When they pulled apart, both were smiling, and she saw joy reflected in his eyes that matched what was swelling in her own heart. The congregation gathered in the church hall for a simple reception. Martha Henderson had organized the women of the town to provide food, and there was a festive atmosphere. People came to meet Harriet, and while she caught some speculative looks and heard a few whispered comments about the age difference, most people seemed genuinely welcoming. An older woman with sharp eyes approached them. "I'm Dorothy Walsh. My husband and I have the ranch north of yours, Vincent. I wanted to tell you both that I think this is a sensible match. I was married at 16 to a man of 50, and we had 40 good years together before he passed. Age matters less than character and compatibility." "Thank you, Mrs. Walsh," Harriet said warmly. "That's kind of you to say. It's just the truth. You come calling when you get settled. I'll share some of my recipes that work well with what grows in these parts." Other neighbors introduced themselves, and Harriet carefully memorized names and faces. These would be her community, the people she would rely on and who would rely on her in turn. The frontier demanded mutual support, and she was determined to be an asset to this community. As the afternoon wore on, Vincent stayed close to her side, his hand often finding hers or resting on the small of her back. She appreciated his support and the clear message he was sending that they were a united front. When people asked intrusive questions about their arrangement, he deflected smoothly and made it clear he considered himself the fortunate one in their marriage. Finally, they were able to leave, waving goodbye to well-wishers as they climbed into the wagon. As soon as they were out of sight of the town, Vincent pulled the horses to a stop and turned to Harriet. "Hello, Mrs. Vaughn." "Hello, Mr. Vaughn," she replied, loving the sound of her new name. He kissed her thoroughly with none of the restraint he had shown before. This was the kiss of a husband claiming his wife, and Harriet responded eagerly, her arms winding around his neck. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I've been wanting to do that all day," Vincent admitted, "but I thought it might scandalize the congregation." "Probably wise," Harriet agreed, her voice slightly breathless. "Though I've been wanting you to do it too." They drove home in comfortable silence, Vincent's hand holding hers on the seat between them. When they arrived at the ranch, he helped her down from the wagon, but instead of releasing her, he swept her up into his arms. "Vince, what are you doing?" she laughed. "Carrying my bride over the threshold, of course. It's tradition." He carried her easily despite her protests that she was too heavy, and she gave up arguing and simply enjoyed being held close to his chest. He set her down gently just inside the door and kissed her again. "Welcome home, wife." "I'm glad to be home, husband," she replied, and realized she meant it with her whole heart. This was home now, truly, and this man was hers just as she was his. That night, they came together as husband and wife, and Harriet discovered that passion did not fade with age. It only deepened with experience and genuine connection. Vincent was a tender and attentive lover, taking his time to learn what brought her pleasure, whispering words of admiration for her body that made her feel beautiful despite her years. She responded with equal passion, showing him the benefits of a woman who knew herself and was not afraid to express her desires. Afterwards, they lay tangled together in the bed they would now share, Vincent's fingers tracing idle patterns on her shoulder. "I love you," he said quietly into the darkness. "I know it's fast, but I do. I love you, Harriet." Harriet's heart swelled with emotion. "I love you too. I didn't think I would feel this way again, but I do. I love you, Vincent." He pulled her closer, and she rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. This was what she had not dared to hope for when she boarded that stagecoach, this deep connection and genuine love. She sent up a silent prayer of thanks for the unexpected blessings life still held, even when you thought all your chances at happiness had passed. The following weeks and months established the patterns of their married life. Harriet threw herself into making the ranch house a true home, sewing curtains for the windows, planting a kitchen garden that thrived under her care, establishing a flock of chickens that provided eggs and the occasional roasting hen. She learned to ride under Vincent's patient instruction, and soon she was accompanying him on rides across the property, learning every corner of the land that was now hers as much as his. Vincent proved to be everything she could have hoped for in a husband. He consulted her on ranch decisions, valuing her practical input. He helped with household tasks without being asked, understanding that partnership meant sharing all the work. He courted her still, bringing her wildflowers from the prairie, reading aloud to her in the evenings, making love to her with passion that never seemed to dim. The town accepted her more fully as time passed, and people saw the genuine partnership she and Vincent had built. She joined the church ladies' auxiliary and contributed to community events. Martha Henderson became a true friend, stopping by for coffee and conversation regularly. Dorothy Walsh taught her which wild plants were edible and useful for medicine, knowledge that proved invaluable. Winter came with fierce blizzards that sometimes kept them housebound for days. Harriet discovered that being snowed in with Vincent was no hardship at all. They worked on ranch accounts together, planned improvements for the spring, played cards and chess, made love before the fire, and talked for hours. The isolation that might have been oppressive with the wrong person was cozy and intimate with the right one. Spring brought new life to the ranch. Calves were born, the garden burst into productivity, and Harriet discovered she was pregnant. She was 43 years old, and she had never expected to bear a child. Her first husband had died before they could start a family, and she had thought that chance was long past. Vincent was overjoyed at the news, though he immediately became protective almost to the point of being overbearing. "I'm pregnant, not dying," Harriet finally told him firmly. "Women have been having babies while doing farm work since the beginning of time. I'll be sensible, but I'm not going to spend the next 6 months sitting idle." "I just want you and the baby safe," Vincent protested. "And we will be. But wrapping me in cotton won't accomplish that. Trust me to know my own body and my own limits." She softened her words by taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. "We're both strong. This baby and I will be fine." Dorothy Walsh, who had raised 6 children of her own, became an invaluable resource. She shared advice on managing pregnancy symptoms and preparing for the birth. "You're older than most first-time mothers," she said bluntly, "but you're healthy and strong. That matters more than age. Just listen to your body and don't try to be a hero." The pregnancy progressed well through spring and into summer. Harriet's body changed, her belly swelling with new life, and Vincent's wonder and love seemed to grow with it. He talked to her belly, telling their unborn child stories about the ranch and promises about the life they would have together. He rubbed her feet when they swelled and held her hair when morning sickness struck. "You're going to be a wonderful father," Harriet told him one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, his hand resting on her rounded stomach. "I hope so. I want to do right by this child, give them all the love and guidance my father gave me." He was quiet for a moment. "Do you think about what they'll call you, grandmother?" Harriet laughed. "I suppose I am old enough to be a grandmother. But I'm going to be this child's mother, and that's what they'll call me. Does it bother you, the fact that I'm older? That people might mistake me for the baby's grandmother?" "Not even slightly," Vincent said firmly. "You're my wife, the love of my life and the mother of my child." Anyone who has anything negative to say can answer to me. Besides, you're more beautiful to me now than the day we met, and you were stunning then." Labor came on a hot August night, earlier than expected but not dangerously so. Vincent rode for Dorothy Walsh while Harriet paced the house, breathing through the contractions that were growing steadily stronger. Dorothy arrived with the calm efficiency of long experience, shooing Vincent out of the bedroom despite his protests. "Let me stay," he pleaded. "I want to be with her." "This is women's work," Dorothy said firmly. "You go boil water and tear up those old sheets like I told you. Make yourself useful where you can actually help." The labor was long and hard, as first labors often are. Harriet drew on reserves of strength she had not known she possessed, focusing on Dorothy's calm instructions and the knowledge that at the end of this struggle she would hold her baby. When dawn light was beginning to streak the sky, a baby's cry finally filled the room. "A boy," Dorothy announced with satisfaction. "A fine, healthy boy, 10 fingers, 10 toes, and lungs like a blacksmith's bellows." Harriet held her son for the first time, marveling at the tiny, perfect features, the shock of dark hair, the way his little hand curled around her finger with surprising strength. Tears streamed down her face as love overwhelmed her, fierce, protective love for this small person who had been worth every moment of pain. Vincent was allowed in, and the look on his face when he saw his son made Harriet fall in love with him all over again. He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, touching the baby's tiny hand with one finger, his expression full of wonder. "He's perfect," Vincent whispered. "Absolutely perfect. Thank you, Harriet. Thank you for this incredible gift." "We made him together," Harriet said softly. "He's ours." They named him Henry, after Vincent's father, and he proved to be a healthy, vigorous baby who quickly established his presence in the household. Vincent was a devoted father, taking his turn walking the floor with a fussy baby, changing diapers without complaint, and gazing at his son with such love it made Harriet's heart ache in the best way. The community rallied around them, as frontier communities did. Women brought food and offered advice. Men helped Vincent with ranch work when he needed extra time to help Harriet. Martha Henderson knitted tiny sweaters and booties. Reverend Parker came to baptize Henry in a simple ceremony at the house. As Henry grew from infant to toddler, the ranch prospered. Vincent's horse breeding program was gaining recognition, and buyers came from as far as Kansas to purchase his stock. Harriet's garden provided abundantly, and she began selling her excess produce and eggs in town, building her own small income. They added on to the house as Vincent had promised, creating a proper library for Harriet and a bedroom for Henry. When Henry was 3 years old, Harriet discovered she was pregnant again. This time, Vincent managed his protective impulses better, having learned that Harriet was indeed capable of knowing her own limits. Their second child, a daughter they named Helen, arrived with less drama than her brother, slipping into the world on a peaceful spring morning. Vincent was utterly smitten with his daughter, and Harriet loved watching this strong rancher melt into tenderness when Helen wrapped her tiny hand around his finger. "I never knew my heart could hold this much," he told Harriet as they watched their children sleep, Henry in his little bed and baby Helen in her cradle. "You've given me everything I could ever want." "You've given me the same," Harriet replied, leaning against his shoulder. "A home, a family, a love I never expected to find. You took a chance on a woman society said was too old for new beginnings, and you gave me the most beautiful second chapter of my life." "Perfect," Vincent said, echoing words he had spoken that first day they met. "You keep me young at heart, Harriet. You always will." The years flowed by, each bringing its own challenges and joys. There were hard winters and drought summers, good years and lean ones, but through it all, Harriet and Vincent faced everything together. Henry grew tall and serious, showing an aptitude for horse training that delighted his father. Helen was spirited and adventurous, more likely to be found climbing trees than helping with household chores, and both parents adored her fierce independence. When Harriet was 50, Vincent threw her a party that brought neighbors from miles around. She protested the fuss, but secretly she was touched by the celebration. She looked around at the full house, at her husband still as loving as the day they married, at her children healthy and happy, at the community of friends they had built, and she felt blessed beyond measure. Any regrets? Vincent asked her that night after everyone had gone home and the children were asleep. Not a single one, Harriet said honestly. Every choice that led me here was worth it. Getting on that stagecoach was the best decision I ever made. Second best, Vincent corrected with a smile. The best decision was saying yes when I asked you to stay. More children came, 2 more sons who filled the house with noise and laughter. The ranch continued to grow and prosper, becoming one of the most successful in the territory. Vincent's horses were sought after throughout the West, and Harriet's garden and preservation skills meant their family never went hungry even in lean years. As Harriet's hair turned fully silver and lines deepened around Vincent's eyes, their love only grew stronger. They had built something real and lasting, a partnership that enriched both their lives. Vincent still brought her wildflowers and told her she was beautiful. Harriet still cooked his favorite meals and read to him in the evenings. They still sat on the porch together watching sunsets, hands entwined, comfortable in the silence that comes from truly knowing another person. Their children grew and eventually began making their own ways in the world. Henry took over more of the ranch operations, showing the same dedication and skill his father had. Helen surprised everyone by becoming a teacher and tailor, bringing education to the next generation of frontier children. The younger boys were still finding their paths, but Harriet and Vincent gave them room to explore and make their own choices. Grandchildren arrived, and Harriet found yet another role to fill, that of grandmother to a growing brood of energetic youngsters who loved visiting the ranch. Vincent built them a tree house and taught them to ride, while Harriet told them stories and baked their favorite treats. The house that had been so quiet when she first arrived was now regularly filled with the sounds of family. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Vincent took Harriet back to Taylor's church, to the spot where they had been married. "I want to renew our vows," he told her. "Tell you again in front of God and witnesses how much I love you and how grateful I am for every day we've had together." Harriet agreed with tears in her eyes, and their family and friends gathered once more to celebrate their love. This time when Vincent promised to love, honor, and cherish, it was with the weight of 25 years of kept promises behind the words. When Harriet made the same promises, it was with full knowledge of what she was committing to and absolute certainty that she would keep those vows for whatever years remained to them. "You were right," Harriet told him afterwards as they sat on their porch, surrounded by children and grandchildren playing in the yard. "That first day you said I was perfect, that I would keep you young at heart. You were right." "We were both right," Vincent said, pulling her close. "We found exactly what we needed in each other. The perfect partner, the perfect love, the perfect life. Not because it was easy or without struggle, but because we built it together with honesty and respect and genuine affection." As the sun set over the Nebraska prairie, painting the sky in brilliant colors, Harriet reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had come west on a stagecoach, a woman society said was past her prime, expecting nothing more than companionship and a place to belong. She had found love, deep and true and lasting. She had found purpose and partnership. She had found home. Vincent's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining as naturally as breathing. "I love you, Harriet Vaughn. I loved you the moment you stepped off that stagecoach looking determined and uncertain all at once. I love you more with every passing year. I love you too, Vincent. Thank you for seeing value in me when others only saw age. Thank you for building this beautiful life with me." She smiled up at him, her eyes still bright despite the silver in her hair. "Thank you for being perfect." "We're perfect together," he corrected, and kissed her softly as their grandchildren's laughter rang out across the ranch, as the sun painted the sky in gold, as life continued in all its messy, beautiful, unexpected glory. Years continued to pass, and while age inevitably brought its challenges, Harriet and Vincent faced them as they had faced everything else together. When Vincent's back troubled him from years of hard ranch work, Harriet rubbed liniment into the sore muscles and insisted he let their sons handle the harder physical labor. When Harriet's joints ached on cold mornings, Vincent brought her coffee in bed and made sure the fire was blazing before she had to get up. They celebrated birthdays and holidays, surrounded by their growing family. The house that Vincent's father had built was expanded several more times, becoming a true homestead that could accommodate gatherings of children, grandchildren, and eventually great-grandchildren. The ranch prospered under Henry's management, and the Vaughn name became synonymous with quality horses and honest dealing throughout Nebraska and beyond. Harriet became a pillar of the Taylor community, serving on the church council and organizing charitable efforts to help new settlers. She never forgot what it felt like to arrive in a strange place hoping for acceptance, and she made sure every newcomer to the area found a warm welcome. Her kitchen was always open, her advice freely given to anyone who needed it. Vincent's reputation grew as well, not just for his horses but for his fairness and integrity. He settled disputes between neighbors, served as an informal banker to those who needed help through hard times, and was a voice of reason in community decisions. People respected the life he and Harriet had built, and the way they treated everyone with dignity regardless of their circumstances. On quiet evenings, when it was just the two of them again after visitors had gone home, they would sit together and marvel at how full their lives had become. The silence they had both known before finding each other was now punctuated by the happy chaos of family, but these peaceful moments alone together were precious. "You remember that first day?" Harriet asked one evening as they sat on their porch, both of them now well into their 60s. "When you said I would keep you young at heart." "I remember everything about that day," Vincent replied, his hand finding hers automatically. "The way you looked stepping off that stagecoach, so dignified and brave. The way you lifted your chin when you thought I might reject you. The moment I knew you were exactly what I had been hoping for." "I was so certain you would be disappointed," Harriet admitted. "I had prepared myself for rejection. Instead, I found acceptance and love beyond anything I could have imagined." "Best day of my life meeting you," Vincent said simply. "Well, tied with the day we married and the days our children were born. But seeing you step into my life was the beginning of everything good." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the vast Nebraska sky. The prairie stretched around them, familiar now as breathing, home in every sense of the word. The house behind them glowed with lamplight, warm and welcoming, filled with the accumulation of their years together. "We should write it all down," Harriet said suddenly. "Our story, how we met, how we built this life. For the grandchildren and their children after them, so they know that it's never too late to start over, to find love, to build something beautiful. You should write it," Vincent encouraged. "You have a way with words. Write it all down, everything from the moment you decided to answer that advertisement to now. It's a story worth preserving." So Harriet began to write, filling journals with the story of their lives. She wrote about her decision to come west, about Vincent's acceptance and immediate affection, about building their partnership and falling deeply in love. She wrote about the birth of their children, the growth of the ranch, the community they had helped build. She wrote honestly about challenges and struggles, but also about the joy and love that had sustained them through everything. Vincent would read what she had written and add his own memories, his perspective on events she described. It became a shared project, their voices intertwining on the page just as their lives had intertwined in reality. The journals filled, a testament to a life well lived and a love that had defied expectations. Their children and grandchildren treasured these journals, reading and rereading the stories of how their family had begun. Harriet's honesty about her fears and Vincent's immediate acceptance became a family legend, proof that love could come when least expected, and that true partnership was worth more than superficial attributes like youth or conventional beauty. As they grew older still, Harriet and Vincent slowed but never stopped. They still took gentle rides around the ranch when weather permitted. They still sat on the porch together every evening. They still reached for each other in the night, seeking comfort and closeness. Their love, tested by time and strengthened by shared experience, remained the foundation of their lives. When Harriet was 70, she became ill with pneumonia. It was the same disease that had taken her first husband, and Vincent refused to leave her side as she fought through the fever and cough. He sat by her bed day and night, cooling her forehead with damp cloths, holding water to her lips, praying desperately for her recovery. "You're not allowed to leave me," he told her fiercely during one of her more lucid moments. "We have more years yet, more sunsets to watch, more grandchildren to meet. You promised to keep me young at heart, and I'm holding you to that promise." Harriet, weak but determined, managed a smile. "I'm not going anywhere if I can help it. We have a bargain, you and I. I intend to keep my end of it." She did recover, though it took weeks of careful nursing and rest. Vincent was tireless in his care, and their children took turns helping. The whole family rallied around, and slowly Harriet regained her strength. When she was finally able to sit on the porch again, wrapped in blankets against the spring chill, she looked at Vincent and saw the toll her illness had taken on him. "I scared you," she said softly. "Terrified me," he admitted. "The thought of losing you, of facing life without you, it's unbearable. You're the best part of me, Harriet, you always have been. And you're the best part of me. We'll have more time yet, my love. I'm not done with you." And they did have more time, precious years that they treasured all the more for knowing how fragile life could be. They celebrated their 30th anniversary, then their 35th. They watched their children thrive and their grandchildren grow. They saw the ranch continue to prosper and the community they had helped build flourish. Vincent's hair turned white, and he moved a bit slower, but his eyes still lit up when Harriet entered a room. Harriet's hands grew gnarled with arthritis, but they still reached for Vincent's automatically. The passion of their younger years had mellowed into a deep, abiding love that needed no grand gestures, only presence and constancy. They spoke sometimes of the future, of what would come when one of them inevitably passed. "I hope I go first," Vincent admitted once. "I don't think I could bear to live without you." "Whichever of us is left will go on," Harriet said practically, though her eyes were soft. "We'll go on because that's what the other would want. We'll go on surrounded by the family we created together, living in the home we built, carrying forward the love we shared." Death will separate our bodies, but nothing can separate what we've built together. Promise me something, Vincent said, taking her hand. Promise that whichever of us is left will still sit on this porch and watch the sunset. Remember the other and all the evenings we spent here together. Keep that tradition alive. I promise, Harriet said solemnly, and you promise me the same. Always, Vincent vowed. As it happened, they would both keep that promise many times over the years. There would be times when illness or injury would separate them temporarily, and the one who was well would sit on the porch alone, watching the sunset and feeling the presence of their beloved even in absence. But always they came back together, reuniting with joy and relief. Their 40th anniversary was celebrated with a massive gathering that brought family and friends from across the state. The house overflowed with people, multiple generations coming together to honor the love that had started it all. Harriet and Vincent, both in their 70s now, sat in places of honor and accepted the tributes with grace and gratitude. 40 years, Vincent said in his speech to the gathered crowd. 40 years ago, I sent for a mail-order bride and hoped for a partner who could handle ranch life. Instead, I got everything I could ever want. I got a wife who was wiser and stronger than I could have imagined. I got a best friend, a confidante, a lover, a mother to my children and a grandmother to theirs. I got the person who keeps me young at heart, who makes every day brighter just by being in it. Harriet, my love, you were perfect then and you're perfect now. Thank you for 40 years of the best life a man could ask for. Harriet stood, tears streaming down her weathered face, and kissed him softly before addressing the crowd herself. I came west expecting duty and perhaps companionship. Instead, I found passionate love and true partnership. Vincent saw past my age to the person I was inside. He valued my experience and my strength. He gave me a home and a family and a purpose. He loved me when I didn't think I could be loved anymore. These 40 years have been the greatest gift of my life. Here's to whatever years we have left, my darling, and to the love that will outlast even those. The celebration continued late into the night, with music and dancing and feasting. Harriet and Vincent danced together, moving slowly but surely through the familiar steps, their bodies knowing each other as well as their hearts did. Around them, their family celebrated, living proof of the love that had created it all. As the years continued, Vincent and Harriet began to slow more noticeably. They needed help with tasks that had once been easy. They napped more during the day and moved more carefully, but their minds remained sharp and their love remained constant. They took joy in small things: a grandchild's visit, a perfect sunset, the first flowers of spring in Harriet's beloved garden. When Vincent was 78, he had a stroke that left him partially paralyzed on his left side. Harriet, despite being 74 herself, became his primary caregiver. She helped him with exercises to regain movement, fed him when his hands wouldn't cooperate, read to him for hours to keep his spirits up. Their children offered to hire help, but Harriet refused. I took vows, she said simply. In sickness and in health, he would do the same for me, has done the same for me. This is what love means. Vincent recovered much of his function over time, though he never regained full use of his left hand. He learned to work around his limitations, and Harriet adapted their routines to accommodate his needs. Through it all, they maintained their evening ritual of sitting on the porch together, Vincent's good hand holding Harriet's, watching the sun paint the sky in its nightly masterpiece. Still perfect, Vincent would say, looking at Harriet rather than the sunset. Still keeping me young at heart. And you still keep me feeling cherished, Harriet would reply. That's a rare gift at any age. They celebrated their 45th anniversary quietly, just the two of them and their immediate family. Both were aware that their time was growing shorter, that each day together was a gift not to be wasted. They had long since made their peace with mortality, but they were not ready to be parted yet. "You think we'll find each other again?" Harriet asked one evening as they watched the sunset. Do you think heaven holds that possibility?" "I have to believe it does," Vincent said. "I can't imagine an eternity without you. Surely God wouldn't bring us together so perfectly in this life only to separate us in the next." "I like to think we'll have a porch there too," Harriet mused, "and eternal sunsets to watch together." "Sounds like heaven to me," Vincent agreed, raising their joined hands to his lips and kissing her knuckles gently. When Harriet was 76, she died peacefully in her sleep with Vincent beside her in the bed they had shared for 47 years. Vincent woke to find her gone, and his grief was profound and terrible. Their children gathered around him, offering comfort, but nothing could fill the void left by Harriet's absence. True to his promise, Vincent continued to sit on the porch every evening and watch the sunset. He would talk to Harriet as if she were still there, telling her about his day, about their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, about the ranch and the community. He kept her garden maintained with help from family, preserving the flowers and vegetables she had loved. He read through the journals they had written together, reliving their life through the words they had recorded. He found comfort in the proof of their love, in the evidence of the life they had built. Harriet was gone, but what they had created together remained, alive in their children and grandchildren, in the thriving ranch, in the community they had served. Vincent lived another 3 years without Harriet. Years he later told his children felt both endless and like no time at all. He missed her with an ache that never fully subsided, but he honored her memory by living fully, staying engaged with family and community, and cherishing every sunset they couldn't watch together, but that he knew she would have loved. When Vincent was 81, he died quietly in his chair on the porch, watching the sun set over the prairie he had loved. His children found him there, peaceful and still, with a slight smile on his face as if he had seen something beautiful in those final moments. They liked to think he had seen Harriet waiting for him, ready to watch sunsets together again. The family buried them side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch with a simple marker that read, "Vincent and Harriet Vaughn, perfect together. Always." The ranch continued under their children's stewardship, and the journals they had written were carefully preserved and shared with each new generation. The story of the mail-order bride who was older than expected, and the rancher who said she was perfect became a family legend, passed down through the generations. It became a reminder that love knows no timeline, that partnership matters more than youth, that starting over is possible at any age. It became proof that sometimes the best things in life come when you least expect them, and that true love, once found, can create a legacy that endures long after the lovers themselves are gone. Their great-great-grandchildren would eventually walk the same land, tend descendants of Harriet's garden, work with horses bred from Vincent's original stock, and sit on an old porch watching Nebraska sunsets, feeling the presence of their ancestors in every beautiful moment. The love that Vincent and Harriet had built together had become part of the land itself, woven into the fabric of family and community, eternal and unbreakable. And somewhere in whatever comes after, two souls sat together on a porch, hands entwined, watching an endless sunset and knowing that their love had been worth every moment, every challenge, every joy. Perfect together, always and forever, just as Vincent had known from that very first day when Harriet stepped off the stagecoach and into his life, his heart, and his future.